Hi students, today the topic of discussion is white matter of cerebrum. What is this white matter? The white matter is made up of a large network of nerve fibers, that is their axons in the brain that allows the exchange of information and communication between different areas of the brain. So, why this white matter is important? To exchange the information between the two cerebral hemispheres and for communication between the two cerebral hemispheres. They are made up of nerve fibers, that is in the parts of the nerve you have cell body, axons and terminal part. So these are made up of, this white matter is made up of axons. Okay. So here you can see this is the cut section of the brain. This is white matter. Whereas this is grey matter. Why it is called white matter? It is called white matter because the nerve fibers which are present in these are covered with myelin. Myelin is a protective sheath which is covering this nerve fibers. So, because of myelin gives white color to these nerve fibers. So, because of the presence of myelin, they are white in color. This is called white matter. So, coming to the types of white matter of cerebrum, there are three types. First is the association fibers, second is the commissural fibers, and third is the projection fibers. First, coming to association fibers. So, these association fibers will connect different gyri of the same hemisphere. Okay, different gyri of the same hemisphere. They may be short association fibers or long association fibers. These short association fibers will connect the adjacent gyri and they are numerous. These long association fibers are further, they are divided into these five types. They are superior longitudinal fasciculus, inferior longitudinal fasciculus, cingulum, fronto-occipital fasciculus and uncinate fasciculus. We will discuss each one by one. So you can see this short association fibers. These are short association fibers. Fasciculus. What is this fasciculus we are talking about? The fasciculus means little bundle. Okay, and is used to describe a bundle of nerve fibers within the central nervous system. So a bundle of nerve fibers within the CNS is called fasciculus. It means little bundle. Coming to the short association fibers, these are connecting the adjacent gyri within the same side of the hemisphere. This is short association fibers and these are long association fibers. We can give a look in the long association fibers. This is superior longitudinal fasciculus. This is inferior longitudinal fasciculus. Okay. This is uncinate fasciculus. This is cingulum. Okay. And here fronto-occipital fasciculus has not shown. So fronto-occipital from here to here it will connect. Now coming to long association fibers. In that the first one is superior longitudinal fasciculus. This is superior longitudinal fasciculus. In the previous diagram also we have seen. So anatomically it is connecting frontal lobe to the parietal lobe and the temporal lobe. So it is connecting frontal lobe with the parietal and temporal lobe. So it is a bidirectional pathway, okay, that connects the parietal and frontal cortices mainly, and it is further divided into superior longitudinal fasciculus 1, 2 and 3 from rostral to the caudal region. What is the function of this fasciculus? It, it is important for wide variety of cognitive functions. Notably, it communicates spatial information between the frontal and parietal lobes. So, this is important for cognitive functions and it communicates the spatial information between the frontal and parietal lobes. So, these are the parts: frontal rami, parietal rami, and temporal rami. Okay, and temporal stem. And you have body and genu. These are the parts of the long superior longitudinal fasciculus. Then coming to inferior longitudinal fasciculus. So this is inferior longitudinal fasciculus, the red one. Okay. It is from antero-inferior temporal lobe to parieto-occipital lobe. So it is connecting antero-inferior part of the temporal lobe to the parieto-occipital lobe. What is the function of this inferior longitudinal fasciculus? The major white matter bundle of the ventral occipito-temporal visual pathway, which is responsible for object recognition and identification, the so-called WAT pathway. So, it is important for object recognition and identification. Okay. So, it is important for object recognition and identification. Now coming to cingulum. So this red one is a cingulum. This is the white matter bundle of the limbic system. Okay, it is a part of the limbic system. It projects bidirectionally through the limbic lobe. That is from cingulate gyrus around the posterior end of the corpus callosum, back forward through the parahippocampal gyrus. So it is from cingulate gyrus. This is cingulate gyrus and it is going up and back. Okay, then it is connecting to the parahippocampal gyrus. This is our corpus callosum. What is the function? It plays an important role in emotional processing. Emotional processing. Now coming to fronto-occipital fasciculus. Fronto-occipital fasciculus. So it is from the parieto-occipital area to the prefrontal area. Okay. So this is connecting prefrontal area to the parieto-occipital area. What is the function? It transmits visual spatial information to the frontal motor areas to guide the movement. So from here to here the information is going. Okay. It transmits visual spatial information to the frontal motor areas to guide the movement. Coming to uncinate fasciculus. Uncinate fasciculus. This is the uncinate fasciculus. It connects the orbital prefrontal cortex and anterior cingulate gyrus with the anterior temporal lobe. So this is the prefrontal cortex. This is the cingulate gyrus and this is the anterior part of the temporal lobe. These are connected together by uncinate fasciculus. What is the function? It combines the processed somatosensory information with the emotional response. Okay. So it combines the somatosensory information with the emotional response. This somatosensory information can be auditory, visual and gustatory. Okay. So it combines this information with the emotional response and regulates the decision making processes. Now coming to the second type of fibers, commissural fibers. These commissural fibers connects the corresponding parts of the two cerebral hemispheres. Okay, so these are between the two cerebral hemispheres and they will connect the corresponding parts. These are also 5 types. First one is the corpus callosum. anterior commissure, posterior commissure, habenullar commissure, hippocampal commissure. First coming to corpus callosum. The corpus callosum, why this name is like this means it is a tough body. In Latin language, corpus callosum means tough body. So this name is coming from Latin. It is the largest white matter structure in the brain, both in terms of size, that is in the cross section mid-sagittal, it is measuring about 700 square millimeters, and 200 million axonal projections will be there between the two hemispheres. So it is the largest white matter structure. This green one is the corpus callosum. So it is having 200 million axonal projections and size is about 700 square millimeters. So you already know that it is a large white matter tract that connects the two hemispheres of the brain. It enables the two sides of the brain to communicate. So the two sides of the brain can communicate with the help of white matter. Coming to the parts of the corpus callosum. It is divided into 4 parts. They are rostrum, genu, body or trunk, and splenium. Here, the rostrum is continuous with the lamina terminalis and it connects the orbital surfaces of the frontal lobes. Okay, so this rostrum is continuous with the lamina terminalis and connects the orbital surfaces of the frontal lobes. Then coming to the genu. Genu is the bend of the anterior part of the corpus callosum and the forceps minor is a tract that projects fibers from the genu to connect the medial and lateral surfaces of the frontal lobes. So, genu is the bend in the corpus callosum. And from the genu, you have forceps minor. This tract will connect the medial and lateral surfaces of the frontal lobes. Then coming to the body. Body forms a long central section and its fibers will pass through the corona radiata to reach the surface of the hemispheres. So the fibers from the body, they will pass through the corona radiata and they will reach the surface of the cerebral hemispheres. Now coming to the splenium. Splenium tapers away at the posterior section with the forceps major projecting fibers from the splenium. So the fibers which are projecting from the splenium are called forceps major fibers. They will connect the two occipital lobes. So what we have learnt in the corpus callosum, it is having 4 parts: rostrum, genu, body and splenium. So rostrum is continuous with lamina terminalis and genu will give rise to the forceps minor fibers. It is a bend in the corpus callosum. Body, the fibers from the body passes through the corona radiata and the splenium will give rise to fibers which are called forceps major. And some white matter fibers projecting from the body and fibers from the splenium. Okay, they are not included in the forceps major. These are called tapetum. So some fibers from the body and some fibers from the splenium together they will form tapetum and run along the entire lateral, occipital and temporal horns of the lateral ventricle. Here, broadly speaking, there are of 2 types of connections. They are homotopic connections and heterotopic connections. Homotopic connections means they will link similar regions from left to right sides of the brain. While heterotopic connections means they will connect dissimilar areas of left and right sides of the brain. So here our commissural fibers are connecting similar parts of the two cerebral hemispheres. So they are homotopic connections. Now coming to the functions of the corpus callosum. So you have seen that it is the largest fiber bundle in the brain and it is important for interhemispheric transfer of information. Interhemispheric transfer of information. So why this is important? It is essential for bilateral responses and learning processes. So this interhemispheric transfer of information is important. It is important for bilateral responses and learning processes. This genu connects the prefrontal cortex between the two halves of the brain. We have seen the parts of the corpus callosum. This genu is connecting prefrontal cortex part between the two halves of the brain. The mid body and splenium, they will connect premotor and supplementary motor regions and motor cortex. Okay, so they are important for motor pathways. Then the posterior body of the corpus communicates somatosensory information between the two halves of the parietal lobe and visual center at the occipital lobe. So it is connecting parietal lobe to parietal lobe and occipital lobe to occipital lobe. So this is the posterior part. Mid body and splenium connecting motor regions. Gene is connecting prefrontal cortex. Maris and Sperry, these are the scientists. They have worked on the lateralization in the cerebral cortex. Okay, and they have studied this corpus callosum in the cat. Okay, they have done studies on the cat. So they have done visual discrimination task in the cat, and they have reported that if you bisect the cat's corpus callosum, so there is no exchange of information between the two cerebral hemispheres. So it is proved that the information is transferring from one cerebral hemisphere to another cerebral hemisphere with the help of corpus callosum. It was proved by doing cat studies by visual discrimination task by Maris and Sperry scientists. Next coming to anterior commissure. Anterior commissure. It is the transversely oriented white matter which connects the two cerebral hemispheres of the brain which are concerned with olfactory pathway. Okay, so it is a connecting olfactory pathway between the two cerebral hemispheres, and it also interconnects amygdala and temporal lobes of the brain. Okay, so it is responsible for connecting olfactory pathway, and it also interconnects. So this is the olfactory pathway, and this is also interconnects amygdala and the temporal lobes of the brain. Okay, like this. So the name is coming from Latin commissura anterior, means anterior commissure. So it is a white matter tract that is connecting two cerebral hemispheres along the midline. It is also having two parts, anterior part of anterior commissure, posterior part of anterior commissure. So anterior part is connecting the olfactory part, posterior part is connecting the hemispheric part, means the temporal and amygdala part. Function, it connects the structures of the olfactory pathway, amygdala and temporal lobes. So this posterior commissure is present in the inferior lamina of the stalk of the pineal gland. Okay. And in the superior lamina, you have habenular commissure, which will come soon. So this posterior commissure is present in the inferior lamina of the stalk of the pineal gland. And here the habenular commissure is connecting habenular nuclei which are present in the epithalamus. See here, this is the commissure of a fornix or a hippocampal commissure. Okay, this is the hippocampal commissure. It provides interhemispheric connections between the temporal lobe of the brain. It is for learning and memory. This is the hippocampal commissure between the two temporal lobes of the brain. It is for learning and memory. This is also called commissure of fornix. Now coming to the projection fibers. This is the third type of white matter in the cerebrum. Those may be afferent fibers or efferent fibers. If projection fibers can be afferent or efferent. So what are the afferent projection fibers? They may be anterior thalamic radiations, posterior thalamic radiations, okay, including optic radiations, superior thalamic radiations, inferior thalamic radiations, including auditory radiations. Okay, these are the four afferent projection fibers. Then coming to the efferent projection fibers or motor projection fibers. Efferent or motor. They are corticobulbar and corticospinal tracts. So you have seen that corticospinal tract will come from cerebral cortex to the spinal cord. Here corticobulbar means cerebral cortex to the brainstem nuclei. This is the and another type of efferent fibers are corticopontine fibers from cortex to the pons, pontine nuclei. This is corticorubral fibers, that is from cerebral cortex to the red nucleus, and corticothalamic fibers, that is from cerebral cortex to the thalamus. So corticobulbar, corticospinal, corticopontine, corticorubral and corticothalamic fibers. These are the efferent projection fibers. Now coming to corona radiata. Okay, so it is also one of the projection fibers. This corona radiata are like this fountain of fibers. It is also called fountain of fibers. It is also called it is also under projection fibers. Okay, so it radiates from the upper end of the internal capsule. So this is the, where is the internal capsule? This one is the internal capsule. These corona radiata fibers are radiating from the upper end of the internal capsule. So they are going towards the cerebral cortex. It contains both ascending fibers and descending fibers. So corona radiata is having both ascending fibers and descending fibers. That is afferent and efferent connections. So see here, the corona radiata is a white matter sheet that continues inferiorly as the internal capsule. Okay, and superiorly it is continuing as a centrum semi-ovale. So this is the corona radiata. Inferiorly it is continuing as the internal capsule, and superiorly it is continuing as a centrum semi-ovale. Okay, this sheet of axons, they will having both ascending and descending fibers. Okay, and carries most of the neural traffic from and to the cerebral cortex. So it is carrying most of the information, neural information from the cerebral cortex and to the cerebral cortex. Now coming to the internal capsule. Internal capsule. So what is this internal capsule? Internal capsule is a two-way tract for the transmission of information to and from the cerebral cortex. So it also carries information from the cerebral cortex and it is also giving information to the cerebral cortex. So it is also having both afferent and efferent projection fibers. So our corona radiata and internal capsule are having both afferent and efferent projection fibers. Okay. So this is the internal capsule. Okay, this is the cerebral cortex and this is the internal capsule. This is the homunculus. This is the homunculus, you know. Okay, where it lies? It lies in the inferomedial portion of the each cerebral hemispheres. On transverse section, it is appearing as a V-shaped structure with the apex is pointing medially. So this is the medial side. It is like this. This is the medial side. This is the lateral side. The internal capsule is having some parts. What are those parts? It is having anterior limb. This is anterior limb. Okay, between the head of the caudate nucleus and lentiform nucleus. So, you know this lentiform nucleus? It is made up of globus pallidus internus, globus pallidus externus and putamen. It is a part of basal ganglia. And this is caudate nucleus. It is a part of limbic system. And this is thalamus. And it is medial geniculate body, it is lateral geniculate body. So, between the caudate nucleus and lentiform nucleus, it is having anterior limb. Then it is having genu. Okay, it is a bend. Then it is having posterior limb. Posterior limb between the thalamus and lentiform nucleus. Then it is having sublentiform part. Okay, so from the medial geniculate body, some fibers will go below the lentiform nucleus, that is sublentiform part. And it is also having retrolentiform part, means from some fibers from the lateral geniculate body they will go posterior to the lentiform nucleus and they will form retrolentiform part. So there are 5 parts in the internal capsule: anterior limb, genu, posterior limb, sublentiform part and retrolentiform part. Then what is present in the internal capsule? What is present in the internal capsule? So you can see here, in the anterior limb, we have anterior thalamic radiations. Anterior thalamic radiations, and these are the frontopontine fibers. Frontopontine fibers. And see here, you have corticonuclear tract or corticobulbar tract, corticospinal tract for upper limb and trunk. This is corticospinal tract of lower limb. This is corticorubral tract. And these are the parieto-pontine, temporo-pontine and occipito-pontine fibers. This is acoustic radiation from the medial geniculate body and this is the optic radiation from the lateral geniculate body. So you have both ascending fibers and descending fibers in the internal capsule. So what are the ascending fibers? These are anterior thalamic radiation radiating to the frontal cortex and superior thalamic radiations going to postcentral gyrus and optic radiation. These are the ascending radiations. And descending radiations, they are containing frontopontine fibers, corticorubral fibers, corticospinal fibers, parieto-pontine and occipito-pontine fibers. So they are descending fibers. So both types of fibers are present in the internal capsule. So you can also see in this diagram that anterior limb is having anterior thalamic radiation. So see this color. This is anterior thalamic radiation in the middle, and on both sides you have frontopontine. That is, they have told that corticopontine. That is cerebral cortex to pons, pontine nuclei. Frontopontine or corticopontine fibers. Okay, in the genu we have part of the superior thalamic radiation. Part of the superior thalamic radiation and frontopontine fibers, and also you see this corticonuclear fibers. So they are coming from cortex. They are going to nuclei in the brainstem. Then in the posterior limb, we have superior thalamic radiations, okay, and frontopontine fibers, okay. Then these are corticospinal and corticonuclear fibers, corticonuclear or corticobulbar fibers, and extrapyramidal fibers. In sublentiform, you have auditory radiation, and in the retrolentiform, you have optic radiation, paretopontine and temporopontine fibers. Okay. So while writing about the internal capsule, you should mention the parts of the internal capsule and what are the fibers in the anterior limb, what are the fibers in the genu, and what are the fibers in the posterior limb, and what are the fibers in the retro and sublentiform area. Okay. So with the different colors, you should highlight this diagram. So what are the ascending and what are the descending fibers? You can already write it down very easily. This is posterior cerebral artery, which is a branch of basilar artery. This is basilar artery giving rise to posterior cerebral artery. Okay. Aphasia is a language disorder. In that the person is not able to communicate effectively. Okay, there will be inability to understand and inability to communicate effectively. Okay, in future videos we will go into detail of this topic. Then if the internal capsule is affected, it is called capsular hemiplegia. It is also showing contralateral hemiplegia, and you can see the facial palsy, upper motor neuron type of facial palsy. And if the midbrain is affected, okay, it is called midbrain hemiplegia. In this also you can see contralateral hemiplegia and ipsilateral lower motor neuron type of third cranial nerve palsy. Okay. Ipsilateral element type of third cranial nerve palsy. And if pons gets affected, it is called pontine hemiplegia. In this you can see contralateral hemiplegia, ipsilateral element type of 6th and 7th cranial nerves palsy. Then coming to medulla, it is called medullary hemiplegia. In this also you can see contralateral hemiplegia and ipsilateral element type of 12th cranial nerve palsy. Okay, 3, 6, 7, 12. Spinal cord. If spinal cord gets damaged or affected, it is called spinal hemiplegia. In this also you can see contralateral hemiplegia, but no cranial nerve involvement will be present. So lacunar infarcts means, what are these lacunar infarcts? These are small infarcts. Okay, small infarcts. Usually they may be between the 2 to 15 millimeters in diameter. They are caused by occlusion of single penetrating branch of a large cerebral artery. So you have large cerebral arteries like anterior cerebral, middle cerebral, posterior cerebral arteries. They are giving their branches, striate arteries. These striate arteries are very small, and lacunar infarcts means these penetrating branches are infarcted. The area is getting infarcted because of the occlusion of these small penetrating arteries. So these infarcts may be between the size of 2 to 15 millimeters. Okay. So up to this we have completed white matter of the cerebrum. So we have seen what is this white matter of the cerebrum, and why it is called white matter, and what are the types of the white matter. So there are basically three types: association fibers, which connect the different gyri of the same hemisphere, and in that we have discussed short and long association fibers. So these association fibers, they will connect different gyri of the same hemisphere. In the long association fibers, we have seen superior and inferior longitudinal fasciculus, cingulum, uncinate fasciculus, and fronto-occipital fasciculus. So we have seen the extent and diagrams and what are the functions of these association fibers. Then we came to commissural fibers. In the commissural fibers also, there are five main bundles. Those are the corpus callosum, anterior and posterior commissure, habenullar commissure, and hippocampal commissure. So we have discussed in detail about all these things. Then we came to the last white matter of the cerebrum, that is projection fibers. There may be afferent projection fibers or efferent projection fibers. And then we have discussed corona radiata and internal capsule. So internal capsule and corona radiata is having both afferent and efferent projection fibers. Then we have discussed in detail about the subdivisions or parts of the internal capsule, and from which are the fibers which are going up and going down. That is, what are the efferent fibers and what are the efferent fibers we have discussed. Then also we are uh, studying about the arterial supply of the internal capsule and what happens if those small branches are occluded. They are leading to lacunar infarcts. So how the patient will present, that is hemiplegia or hemiparesis. In that we have discussed it. We have told that 20 types are present, but 5 types are most common and most important. Okay. Then the next video is about autonomic nervous system.